this regional power there is saying that, look, I mean, Israel should currently has with the Palestinians. What more can be done? I mean, we see the U.S. playing a key role in this. We've seen Britain also intervening. We've seen Germany big time, even promising additional 50 million euros in aid. And of course, right from when this whole crisis, or if you like, conflict started, the U.S. had promised sending munitions, sending all sorts of support in favor of the Israelis. It doesn't seem like anybody has made practical steps towards peace, or at least ceasefire as it stands right now. As expected, Global Television will continue to follow this story for you, and all we can expect is that peace, or at least ceasefire, is reached as quickly as possible, so that those who have lost loved ones can find a way to mourn properly, and then this madness will be halted, at least for once. But back home, a lot has also happened. We understand that the President, Bola Tinubu, has continually made efforts in the last couple of days to strengthen systems and structures around his renewed hope agenda, which he had long promised Nigeria. We've seen a couple of appointments coming on stream. We've seen the president continually doubling down on his push for foreign direct investment to strengthen the economy. We've seen a few announcements around here, some of them typical policy pronouncements, others all in a bid to ensure that certain sectors do better than they currently are doing. But what does all of this mean? All right, still back at home, INEC has 3 off-cycle elections in front of it. One of them is Bayelsa, the other is Imo, and the third is Kogi. However, Kogi appears to be much more in the news than Imo and Bayelsa, and sadly it's for the wrong reasons. Just yesterday, news came through that there had been some alleged attempts on the life of the governor, Yahaya Bello. I recall that elections in Kogi in the last couple of years have been marred by violence. And the interesting thing is every party is playing the victim. Every party is saying that we are being attacked, we are the ones who are taking the brunt. But the governor now is saying that I escaped death by the whiskers. However, the police have waded in, and we understand investigation is ongoing. So we keep our fingers crossed, looking forward to seeing what the outcome of this investigative process will be. However, on its own part, INEC has started making, doubling down on efforts to ensure that these 3 elections are nothing but successful. And as part of that, INEC had a briefing just last Friday where it told journalists that, look, we are not only prepared for these elections, but more specifically, we have been able to do a lot of work in terms of availability and distribution of sensitive materials. We've been able to do so much in terms of reaching out to other agencies, to stakeholders, including political parties and security agencies. As a matter of fact, this morning, the leadership of INEC, led by its own chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, will be meeting with the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, and his team, all in the bid to ensure that security or issues around security are properly addressed early enough for this election. Are these efforts far-reaching? Is there something more that should be done? Has INEC learned anything from previous elections, particularly the last cycle of general election just held in 2023? And what are those lessons? In what ways can they be put to use as far as these 3 elections are concerned? It's a big conversation for us this morning on the show as well. We also have a special report on Ajaokuta Steel Complex. This is one facility that has been dormant for decades. But now the government, under the leadership of President Tinubu, says it can be business as usual. The earlier we get this thing done and get our economy working again, the better for us as a country and, of course, as a government. Just a week ago, we're told that that complex is 98% completed. And government now says that when it's all said and done, it has the potentiality and capacity to hire 500,000 Nigerians. How feasible is this? What are the challenges on the road to achieving this lofty goal? We'll also find out on the show this morning. In the meantime, we're taking a quick break. When we return, we'll look at the papers for you. Let's start with Daily Trust for you. Big story says domestic foreign airlines disagree on multiple designations. Are businesses at risk? Indigenous carriers, go and build your capacity. Foreign airlines, what bilateral air service agreement says. Burning Gwari villagers raise alarm over Ansaru militants' presence. Kano Dutse emirs seek government support for farmers. Ordering contractors back to site without payment wrong, Uriwa tells FG. Pandora's box, evidence of how Bello Matawale blew billions in cargo airports and for our government. These are all stories on this day newspaper. Daily Trust, I should say, this morning. But we have Leadership newspaper as well. Leadership newspaper, it says, despite subsidy removal, oil revenue drops by 1.01 trillion naira in July. Anxiety as Supreme Court rules on articles motion today. 3 months after student loans came yet to take off. What's the reason? Why are we experiencing this delay? You can find details on page 4 of the Leadership newspaper. Israel issues fresh Gaza evacuation warning. Why? After the first one that put that region under pressure, a region of over 1 million human beings. What exactly can be done to check this? What's more damage? How much more damage could be done in light of this new evacuation order issued by Israel? Of course, you can read that up on page 6 of the Leadership newspaper. There's no assassination attempts on me, says Governor Bello. So who is saying what and who is saying the truth? Again, that's on page 6 of the Leadership newspaper. Recall yesterday, news was all over that the governor had narrowly escaped death. In fact, we're told that the police are now investigating, but here Leadership is reporting that the governor himself says, there was never an attempt on my life. As they say, you can't be more, you can't cry more than the bereaved. Others will say you can't be more Catholic than the Pope. But we'll wait to see exactly what the position of this is. 5 burned to ashes in fuel tanker accidents in Kwara. Quite an unfortunate accident there. Enrollment drops in Unity schools over high fees on page 13 of the Leadership newspaper. On that note, we turn to the Punch newspaper for you. Front page, big story. 3-year blueprints. FG plans 26 trillion naira borrowing, 29 trillion naira for debt servicing. Debt servicing to exceed capital budget spending by 7.69 trillion naira amid slow economy. High debt servicing costs creating potential fiscal risks. Government laments. Above the nameplates of the Punch newspaper is a picture of CBN Governor Dr. Cardoso. Naira slums further exchanges at 1,190 naira. Fuel hits 685 naira per litre in North. Why is it different in the northern part of the country than in the south? Well, we wait to see. In the meantime, you can read it up on page 31 of the Punch newspaper. Still above the nameplate of the Punch is a headline with the picture of Governor of Kogi State. Yahaya Bello. Says assassination, police probe alleged attempts on Bello. 5 die, 15 injured in Lagos-Ibadan highway crash. 5 die, 15 injured in Lagos-Ibadan highway crash. APC PDP hopeful as Supreme Court battle starts today. France mourn Nigeria medical student killed in Philippines. Allegedly, he was killed by a Chinese in the Philippines, a Nigerian medical students there. Israeli Hamas, Biden, Pope, protesters want cease fire. It's long overdue, no doubt about that, but as they say, better late than never. Okay, but before we take a break now, let's take a look at Tribune for you. That's our next paper this morning. The big story on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune says, exchange rates industries battle for survival as Nigerians suffer losses. Manufacturers pay up to 30 different taxes, levies annually. Man laments. Petrol pump price hits 630 naira per litre in Abuja. More filling stations shut down. Above the nameplate, Atiku's team displays documents signed on Saturday by Lagos courts apart from his affidavit. Odua Foundation to launch defined projects to boost education in Southwest. And then just at the foot of today's Tribune, he says contractors oppose FG's order to return to sites without payments review. Contractors oppose FG's order to return to sites without payments review. How gunmen dressed in military uniforms attacked Bello's convoy. Kogi government, how gunmen dressed in military uniforms attacked Bello's convoy. That's according to Kogi government. It's becoming a bit more confusing. But again, like I said a while ago, we probably will have to wait for the police to tidy up its reports, and then we'll see what that says and ultimately where it leads. Okay, but then we have one more headline on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. It says Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Ogun gives traders at Kara other road setbacks 21 days to quit. All right, okay, you'll find that story on page 27 of the Tribune this morning. We do hope you find time to take a look at these papers for you and then see where the news is heading this morning. As we take a break now, because we have a few more papers to look at for you, in the meantime, we need to bring you our conversation on the show this morning. Ajaokuta Steel Mill, Nigeria's largest of its kind, has been largely inoperative for decades, a development that has denied this country billions in dollars in terms of earning. In this special report, Global TV's Sharon Ajay samples opinions of Nigerians, and here's that report for you.
A cross-section of Nigerians has reacted to the announcement by the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Prince Shaibu Audu, assuring of the federal government's commitment to complete the Ajaokuta Steel Construction Project, which is said to have the potential of creating 500,000 jobs for Nigerians. Nigerians have aired their views concerning the issue of the ongoing Ajaokuta Steel Construction Project. For a steel complex that has been comatose for decades, many Nigerians are full of expectations, and it serves as a test of government resolve. However, Edward, for instance, does not find the story particularly inspiring.
We've heard so much about Ajaokuta Steel, and it's like at a point we're beginning to lose hope. But because hope is the essence of life, we believe that this government, or whatever successive government, should do something about it. But Nigeria needs it, and Nigeria is more important than anybody. So we are believing that because of humanity, we need it. We can't continue to be stagnant. We need to move forward.
Roberts, on the other hand, expresses optimism and advises Nigerians to keep hope alive while constantly believing in and supporting the government.
The time has come for us to actually believe in the words of Mr. President. You understand, he's a pragmatic person. He's focused, and he has direction. And he has armed himself with technocrats. And I believe so much in the words of the Honorable Minister, who is a representative of the President of the Republic of Nigeria. And also, you have a permanent secretary, you understand, in that ministry that is a technocrat. And I believe that they will swing into action very soon.
For Wasil Awar, a civil servant, more commitment to the Ajaokuta steel complex is expected of the government, considering the need to industrialize Nigeria in order to encourage local production.
We have the natural deposit of this steel in Nigeria, so it cannot just be wasted, it cannot be moribund. If the other subsequent previous administration have been coming, they are making leaps emphasis on it. But I think he is more pragmatic on it, as he laid emphasis on it now. But you have to realize that the Ajaokuta steel is not going to start from embryo. It has gotten to a stage before it was moribund. So now what he's going to do now is to resuscitate it. So by resuscitating it, all the manpower needed, the capacity and capability needed, he knows them. Just to ask them to come back. And once it is top on his agenda, so if it's top of on his agenda, it's going to lay emphasis on it, and the thing will be prosecuted.
Sharon Ajay reporting for Global TV News.
Sharon for that brilliant report there. Taking a look at the Ajaokuta Steel Complex. I mean, it was a big deal, really, because other folks, grown-ups, talked about it so much. And I look back now, several years down the line, and it's clear to me how pivotal, just like several other moribund facilities across this country, had contributed very immensely to our economy. Of course, tomorrow people will talk about the groundnut pyramid, people will talk about coal, people will talk about cocoa, and so on and so forth. Even palm oil, for example. I mean, every time we talk about that, you hear people talk about how that Malaysia had come to Nigeria a couple of decades ago to pick some seedling from here, and today they produce more red oil, as we call it, I mean the palm oil, than we do as a country. So the question is, what exactly has happened to our economy? What has happened to us in the last couple of decades? What are we looking at, really? What has distracted us from these extremely viable resources? Some people say, well, it's crude oil. So if crude oil has become such a distraction, can it still be said to be a blessing at this point in time? Now, speaking of crude oil for a minute, see what certain countries have done with monies realized from sale of crude. I mean, from Qatar to the UAE to Bahrain, for example. See what they've done. See how they've transformed their economy over time, consistently using monies realized from the sale of crude. What have we done since 1958 that oil was discovered in Oloibiri in the Niger Delta region of this country? It has been one form of drawback after the other. It has been public officials using these monies to purchase choice property abroad, I mean across the world. It has been Nigerians taking this money to fund family interest abroad, to sponsor their cronies. And what does that do to us? It breaks our infrastructure. It fractures our healthcare system. It sinks our education. It drives development into the ground. And what's more, it just makes us look even worse, far worse, in terms of corruption index. So what do we do to ensure that oil becomes a blessing that it ought to be, that even God himself made it to be for us, as against being this setback that we have made it today? Well, it means we must be sincere with ourselves. First of all, we must look inward and tell ourselves the truth, because until we find the courage to tell ourselves the truth, we're just going to be stuck in the woods for a very, very a long time. On Friday, just to turn to other issues now, INEC did have a briefing with journalists. As a matter of fact, there was a meeting between the chairman of the commission, that is the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, and the RECs, the resident electoral commissioners. Prior to that, while briefing journalists, the chairman of INEC had said that, look, not only have we been making steady progress towards ensuring that elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi are successful, we continue to strengthen the preparations that we've made already. So beyond that briefing on Friday, INEC has another meeting this morning, which is aimed at brainstorming with the National Security Advisor and his team. But INEC also said something very pivotal, amongst other things, on Friday, when the chairman himself did mention that, look, we are going to transmit results electronically. And he said, look, we are also going to use the IRF. So what INEC has done basically is to say we can be held accountable on the basis of the promises that we've made, and then within the confines of our mandates as the electoral umpire in Nigeria. I wanted to see that report. That will give an insight, and then we'll put our conversation on the road for you in a bit. Do stay with us.
This is one of several meetings organized by the Commission to brainstorm and address last-minute challenges. However, having appreciated the RECs and other officers, the chairman gives an update on the 2023 general election.
You may recall that we met in July this year to review the conduct of the last general election, followed by a retreat in Lagos. Our reports for both the 2023 general election and the outcome of our review of the same election are being finalized.
On the 3 off-cycle elections, Professor Yakubu says,
in the next 3 weeks, off-cycle governorship elections will be held in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states. The 3 elections will involve 5.4 million registered voters that will vote in 10,510 polling units spread across 649 electoral wards in 56 local government areas.
Once again, the Commission's chairman gives assurance on the mode of transmission of results of the elections.
So far, all non-sensitive materials for the election have been delivered to the 3 states. Other preparatory activities, including training, are on course. Valuable lessons have been learned from the 2023 general election for improved performance in the forthcoming elections. Last week, we concluded a mock accreditation involving actual voters in designated polling units in the 3 states. We had 2 objectives for the exercise. First, to test the efficacy of the bimodal voter accreditation system, the BVAS, for especially biometric authentication of voters. Secondly, to upload the result to the INEC result viewing portal, IREV. Both tests were successful.
UGBOMOFUEGBE, reporting for Global Television News.
So there you have it, INEC chairman setting the record straight and giving some insight into what these 3 off-cycle elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi will look like. But there have been controversies surrounding the last election, the general election, whether it was the National Assembly, the State Houses of Assembly, governorship, and even presidency, particularly from the standpoint of INEC. Of course, INEC is never ever going to get away with, going to be insulated from criticisms and controversies, no matter how the commission tries to. However, INEC has done assessment, or if you like, a post-mortem of those elections, and we did follow, and the INEC chairman himself had talked about how that INEC was still studying at a point those elections to know where exactly there were loopholes, identify areas where the commission could have done better, and then improve on their performance going forward. So the big question amongst others is, in what ways will the conduct of the Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi governorship elections show to Nigerians that INEC has significantly improved, and what exactly would those areas be? Because until elections are free, fair, transparent, and credible, then it means we are still in big trouble as far as our electoral process is concerned. This morning, I'm joined by Oladotun Hassan, a lawyer and president, Yoruba Council Worldwide. Thank you, Dotun, for joining us this morning. We do appreciate it.
Yes, good morning. It's a pleasure to be on your program this morning. I'm highly honored.
Thank you. Thank you. So I understand you have a press briefing coming up in Lagos this morning, but let's take the time to quickly talk about elections in Nigeria with a particular focus on Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi off-cycle elections. I know you've passionately followed elections in this country for a long time. Kogi in particular always has elections that are marred by violence. Of course, there are always pockets of violence with our elections overall. However, I want us to focus on these three off-cycle elections that are just about 2 weeks in front of us.
Well, basically, election rituals in Nigeria, the way we prepare for election, we always see election as war. We see election with
to appear we lost
as a first pre-planned target in terms of what is required. Once we say it's an institution, especially with the way the INEC will always come as it preparing for election, it's like
a bit of a network.
The institution needs to get its acts together at all times. The election in Kogi, the election in Bayelsa, yes, these are staggered elections that came as a result of court processes and all that led them not to follow the other processes of other state elections. But that notwithstanding, in terms of preparation, yes, INEC has given guarantee that they are well prepared. They will always come with the grandstanding that they know it all. But what about their ad hoc staff? What about the infrastructure? What about the IREV? Is everything intact? Have they done test run? Have they been able to ascertain that elections results will get to maybe from the polling unit to the central polling centers, that their results will be captured and forwarded immediately? These are issues that INEC need to look at, because if these issues are not properly well set out, it will come back as a rudiment of election litigation. Because, however, in terms of preparation, the people must be at the first hand prepared. How are people within Kogi State prepared for election? How did they perceive the election? Is it like a war? Are they looking at the comparative advantage of why the government of the political party? So, however, we know in this part of the world, not all elections are free, credible, and fair. But we hope that in terms of how this election will be, candidate needs to be prepared. They need to orientate their agents. They need to orientate their supporters. They also need to be guided on how the kind of information they put out there, because a misinformed public will be deformed. So in as much as we are all concerned, the citizens' orientation is very key, and the political players' sincerity is also very, very needful at this point in time. They need to put Nigeria first, not their selfish and self-centered political pursuit. In as much as how it's going to be, we should be all well guided. Institutions like police don't need to be the apron bag of the political ruling party. These are issues that affect election. When police are not sincere and neutral, when other law enforcement agencies are not sincere or neutral, these are times the election monitoring groups also need to come alive. Not until election day. We want to know the real information at every polling unit. Then let's begin to guide ourselves as we move ahead beyond this election as we prepare for other activities of the country.
On Friday, when the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, briefed journalists, he did mention very specifically that results from these 3 off-cycle, or as you called it, staggered elections, would be transmitted electronically. He mentioned in particular IREV. We had seen in recent past where, for whatever reason, results in some cases were not transmitted electronically. Help us make sense of all these, because this is 2023. Are we supposed to be having a debate back and forth about whether or not results should be transmitted electronically?
Well, it's very important to understand the environment and the checkered history we have as a country. Yes, that is why I mentioned institution. When it's an institutionalized process, you don't need to wait for INEC to do its job. You go there, INEC perform its duty, IREV or whatever, however, should be their duty bound, and they have the duty of care to deliver free, fair, and credible election, because that is taxpayers' money. So INEC hold the country a duty of care. So beyond the media frenzy of we are prepared, we are grounded, we are this, we want to be assured, because yes, previous gubernatorial election, especially that of Osun State, witnessed immediate and on-time uploading of results through IREV. We only had the IREV issues during the general election of the presidential election, and that's INEC raised 1 or 2 issues as a result of cyber attacks and glitches on their system. But that shouldn't be an excuse not to do the needful. They need to be properly guided. We need a proper, it's all about desperation of our politicians. If that is reduced, we don't need to get ourselves part up with all these processes. If everyone is sincere and everyone is as planned for the election, not through the back door, not rigging, not through every measures of vote buying and all sorts, if everyone is prepared, and that is one thing, the preparedness of our politicians, most of them are more prepared to see how they can circumvent and also go behind to conspire and connive with the INEC officials to subvert the will of the people. So these are issues that we need to begin to look at, and it's very important that the law needs to be put in to be effectively enforced against erring officials that have found one thing in one way or the other, either pre or post-election. So we need all hands to be on deck. Enforcement of electoral malpractices, pre-election violence cases, and threat, even where there are false information in the public domain, people should be sanctioned for false alarm. People should be sanctioned to raising the crisis or breeding crisis. So for me, INEC preparation is on their table. They have duty of care. The most important thing is the people. The people need to be coordinated. They need to see election not as an election of ethnic or intra-tribal crisis, because that's where we see election in this part of the world. So until our orientation are very quick to understand, based on merit, based on capacity and capabilities, that we are running elections and we are voting our leaders. But if you run and vote our leaders on the premise of religious sentiment, on the premise of political affinity, on the premise of just the godfatherism, we are not going anywhere. We will keep to recycle the rigging processes that are bedevil laws. We'll keep to recycle electoral malpractices that will not take governance to any height. We'll also keep to recycle political gladiators that do not have our love at heart. So we need the people to be orientated. We need, and that's what I'm very key on. Elections should be more of service and not on pecuniary self-centeredness. So I believe strongly INEC at the national level, and that is one key thing. If INEC at the national level is planning for gubernatorial election, and once the governor gets in, they begin to plan for local government election, that is wrong. INEC should be in charge of all electoral processes. That is the duty. In as much as then INEC, and this is one of my advice, INEC should be left off the hook of the executive president. Let INEC be the fourth arm of government, beyond the judiciary, beyond the way we have the executive and legislature. Let INEC also there is a process of ascension to becoming the chairman, not just anybody from anywhere you just bring and become the INEC chairman without due process of that institution. So these are fault lines that year in, year out affect our elections, and we must deal with it if we must move forward.
This is your last call, Hassan. I must say, would naturally require us to take another look at the law, I mean the Constitution. If you say, like other lawyers, other public affairs analysts have said, look, we can't have a situation where a governor should appoint or should be appointing the person to midwife local government elections. It should be within the purview of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Isn't that a tall order for us as a country, given where we are today with our electoral process?
It's all about the willpower. It's all about the commitment to service and patriotic zeal. No nation exists without planning. We as a people will always believe that manna must fall from heaven. Our elections must be an Eldorado. No, we must set out. We need to understand that this is black man world. This is Africa. We are not in white man's world, whereby people just do things in a number. I'm not saying they don't have their issues, but in terms of credibility and citizens' participation and sincerity to patriotic zeal of nationhood, we don't have it here. Our people are bedeviled with a lot of crisis. Poverty is there. But in as much as we are talking about the law, it is high time we get our constitution rightly. Our constitution, to me, I've always been as a constitutional lawyer, I've always advocated the need to repeal the entire 1999 constitution as amended. We cannot be amending a law that emanates from a decree, a law that does not even give us that autonomous rightful ownership as citizens that we cannot even call our own. A law that has not been interpreted in all major languages of the citizens to understand that this is what this law really means. And if it is about the law, the rule that governs our electoral laws and the way and manner we go about our preparation, our governance structure, we cannot be using some archaic and substandard rules. Substandard rules in terms of the qualification, the entire process, uploading of it. This should be a separate body. INEC as an institution ought to have its own budget, just as the way we have the judiciary. Nobody should have, if you are being employed in INEC, you must have that orientation. INEC should not be looking for ad hoc professors from universities anyhow. They need to have a well-guided people who are well-orientated. The only thing they must need, if we have electronic means of voting, and we are now well updated as a country, digitalized, then we can now reduce a high concentration of manpower in dealing with electoral infrastructural deficiencies that is affecting us. But there is a whole lot that is needed. The very fundamental thing is the willpower, which is mostly lacking in us. We must tell ourselves the truth. Not that we don't have good INEC chairman or INEC professors, but the entire process will always leave the other party at the helm of suspicion. So if I am the president and I appoint a sitting INEC person or the electoral coordinators across the governing board of INEC, why would a president be appointing INEC officials? Nothing. That will impute the seat. It will inflammate the entire structure and fabrics of democracy. to suspicion, and it easily can dampen our democracy and can really lead to breakdown of law and order. It's because we are submissive to ourselves and we endure all these excesses some way, somehow, in some states. But beyond what we know, if democracy must thrive, it requires us as citizens orientation, not citizens that are broken down into religious mushroom groups or ethnic bigotry, no, citizens that are battered with a lot of ill-informed and ill-advised views. No, but when citizens are well-orientated about governance, and we go to church, we talk about governance. You go to mosque, you talk about governance. You go to school, you talk about governance. And in all spaces, we talk about governance. And we put the country first. Definitely, that requires, and that will all make all of us to be collectively responsible to the development of the country. But in this climate, there is a need for our leaders, our elected leaders across board, from councillors to the president, to have a further orientation of how to manage a well and advanced democratic state. And we cannot continue to be a third world country. Let us think on how we get to the next level so that we can match the expectation of the Committee of Nations as a country.
I have just one more question for you before we're done with this discussion. Over time, I mean, since 1999 till date, it has become, if you like, a traditional practice for election matters to end up in courts. In fact, someone wrote an article a few months ago saying that we now have, as a country, more election outcomes decided by courts than announced by INEC. Is that something we should feel comfortable with, or is something that should give us real concern?
Well, let me let you understand. It's not that the elections are determined by courts. Pre-election processes like this will amount to giving the decision of the court a better perspective of what ought to be. And courts are not Father Christmas. It is on the issue and premise of what you present before the court that their rule of law, their rule that guides the electoral processes. If you violate any of the rules, either via your nomination from your political party, if you are not properly nominated by the political party, you are disqualified. If you don't have the required competence and credentials, you are disqualified. If you fault, you are disqualified. So a lot of other things comes in and crept in that candidates adduce against each other before the court, whereby they are overvoting. We have seen scenarios of overvoting. It's just for you to minus the accredited voters from each polling. That is what our politicians don't know. We are now in a digitalized world. You cannot just dump and begin to dump and print your ballot boxes just the way we usually have before. So because of lack of credible mindset of our politicians, the court is not a bandwagon of determining all junks. No. The court is a procedure, and their procedure, and procedure is a procedural space where people bring in their facts before the judge. Everyone argue their facts. If you don't have anything to substantiate your winning, you are gone. So we cannot begin to fan embers of disunity on the premise of claiming that the judges are bad. I can read on some social media now this mob of attack against our judiciary, and I also read one of the spokesman of Atiku Abubakar, Timi Frank, advising the Supreme Court judges. Is prejudicing the court. You are telling them, oh, they should not decide in favor of the other party, meaning they must decide in your own favor. These are bad. We cannot just continue to saturate the media space with falsehood, with deceit, and with misinformation. These are ingredients that can lead to a full-blown war, if not properly curtailed. And for me, it's an advice to our National Orientation Agency. We don't need to wait till election rituals before our citizens need to be orientated on the rudiments of what they should know and how they need to be guided on election matters and electoral processes.
I thought I was not going to ask you this, but then I just have to back again to Kogi, even though we know Imo State has its own peculiarity with regards to violence, even long before this election in that state. Bayelsa, of course, has its own issues. We know of all of those. But in the case of Kogi, for instance, just yesterday, news came through that the governor, Yahaya Bello, had narrowly escaped death. And this morning, Leadership newspaper is particularly reporting the governor saying that, well, he was never attacked. Meanwhile, the government house reported that the governor narrowly escaped death. And then you find other political parties also speaking up about violence against them. So everybody seems to be playing the victim in their states. However, the bottom line here is how that violence characterizes our electoral process. Can we also blame that on INEC?
No, well, let on the Kogi, specifically on Kogi, I think this is not the first time the governor is adducing assassination attempt. This is almost the third time that we are witnessing. And in every of those scenarios, there are skirmishes of intra-political rivalries. It is not totally assassination attempt, but mostly these are scripted, intended falsehoods. And we must condemn some certain things in our climate, no matter which party you may belong. For the fact that these are wrong steps, people should be sanctioned. By now, I expect the Commissioner of Police to have arrested the Commissioner of Information of Kogi, or either the governor might have premeditated that, or anybody. But for the fact that somebody was held liable for that false alarm is an offense. So, in as much as that is just one arm of the entire Kogi crisis, Kogi is an embellished crisis haven. And if proper things are not done, and I want to properly call the attention of the Inspector General of Police, the DG of the DSS, and the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to see Kogi election without any iota or political party affiliation. They must see Kogi crisis from the perspective of protecting the citizens' rights. All Kogi citizens must be protected on election day. No one should threaten the order. And because we are aware of threats of gangsterism, of thuggery, of killing, of mass invasions, this should not be. Let citizens elect anyone that they so find. So if you are winning, win credibly. If you are losing, lose with remorse, not lose with, don't be a bad loser, that you must bring down the entire country or you must bring down the entire state if you are a loser. That is the system we are running on. And it's all about our mental orientation. We have a bad mentality to elections. And the earlier we correct that mentality, the mentality of creed, of either I'm Ibira, or I'm Kogibon, or I'm a non-indigene, or even in Bayelsa, we have similar crises everywhere. We have crises in Imo everywhere. So election in Nigeria is mostly seen as a Hitler war, and which not to be. Election should be a time for Jojo to really merriment and see how to better the state. We see how elections are done in other climes. You go there, you vote. You need not use one day to conduct election. We can use 1 week. You continue to vote until the last point that everybody must have been given a space to vote. Here, we just want to rush. We just want to do things without us properly planning. If we use longer time to plan our election, from month of September to month of November, voting has started. You go conveniently to go and vote. You'll be reading from the portal of INEC. You'll be reading who is winning and who is losing. You don't need to kill yourself before the declaration. INEC don't need to begin to calculate their head with mathematics. Because we can get it right. We have the resources. We have the money to be a first world nation. But because of the diatribe of ethnicity, religious animosity, and political attrition, that is really bedeviling us. And the earlier we get it right, else we need to put blood on the street if we must talk about an election process. We know how Kogi's elections have always been year in, year out.
We'll have to leave it this morning. Oladotun Hassan, lawyer, President, Yoruba Council Worldwide, for this brilliant thoughts that you have shared on the program this morning, especially where you referenced former President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan saying that his ambition was not worth the blood of any Nigerian. Would like to say a big thank you to you for